was also very, very fortunate to have several strong male figures in my life growing up. Like my father didn't really stick in the picture for forever, even though ironically he's the one that got me into sports originally. But there was like a football coach or there was a wrestling coach or somebody that just kind of like pulled me to the side and said, "Hey, I'm gonna make you good at this, or I'm gonna help you along." And basically they gave me like some sort of paternal guidance or energy or something like that that just said, "Hey, I think there's something unique or special to you. You're gonna be under my tutelage for like a little bit." So I had like a football coach that was like that. And then I had a wrestling coach like that. I remember I wasn't even gonna do any high school wrestling, and then what happened was I had a guy named Coach Crane who basically saw me in football. He was like one of the lineman coaches, and he just saw that I was like very spirited and eager to kind of like work. And I think he looked that he noticed that I really liked, or I really, what do I say, responded well to paternal or masculine like guidance and stuff like that. And so he saw that I was very coachable. And so he basically told me one day, he's like, "Abraham, you have no choice. You're going to be on my wrestling team." And I'm like, "Okay." And so then I kind of like peer pressured into doing wrestling. And so I did it anyway. And it actually ended up being a pretty good thing for me. I think, brought me a lot of stability when I was in high school that was needed.
What is up, ladies and gents? It is your friendly neighborhood BJJ podcaster, Raph Esparza, coming to you with another great installment of the Grappling Hour. I hope you're doing well. We have an excellent guest. We'll get to him in a second here, but I want to tell you something about what we do here at the Grappling Hour. If this is your first time watching our show, I hope that you'll like this interview. And if you do, like, comment, and subscribe. And even if you don't know what you want to comment on, by the end of this video, I will give you something to talk about in the comment section. So don't worry, we give you prompts. We walk you through this process very easily. Additionally, you can also join our Patreon, patreon.com/grappling hour. For just $5 a month, you can see our interviews 30 days before anybody else. And for a few extra dollars, you can see tape studies with our favorite athletes, where they go over their matches with me. I get to ask them questions. It's very cool. You can also see a segment that we call Roast Raph, where people roast my competition footage. It's not to help me. It's never to help me. In fact, Gary Tonin did one, and you know what I mean? Like, very good analysis by Gary. Jokes could be better. About a B-, honestly. Like, you know what I mean? Like, amateur comedian, not bad, but I expected more from Gary. At one point, he was just like, "Oh, that was just bad." I was like, "You're not wrong. That was a really bad move on my part. Yikes." So you can check that out at patreon.com/grappling hour. Additionally, last couple reminders, go on over to our, Spotify and Apple podcast page and join us there. You can get the audio versions of these shows. And if you want to continue the discussions that we have here on the show, why don't you just go to our Discord? And it is, of course, at Grappling Hour Discord. All right, our guest. Well, maybe you haven't met our guest, but maybe your legs have met the repercussions of his work. The Abe Lock has taken the jiu-jitsu world by storm. And yes, our guest here is somebody who you may be entitled to compensation for if you've been attacked by an Abe Lock. I don't want to say that we have a lawsuit pending, but it's probably coming in the future. Nonetheless, he is an excellent addition to our grappling community. He does stellar breakdowns, stellar Instagram reels, and you can find all of that and much, much more from this gentleman, all the way from the beautiful New Wave team. Let's welcome for the very first time, one, Abraham La Montagne. How are you doing, sir?
Good. How are you, brother?
I'm very well, man. So what is this whole thing? Like, why are you targeting people's legs? Because I've seen opportunities to attack that Abe Lock for years, but not very proficient at it. I look at you and I go, man, this dude is killing it like this and inspiring lots of people to do so.
Honestly, I think it probably just gets a lot of attention because it's kind of a meme position in a lot of ways, but it's one of those meme positions that it looks funny because it's like, haha, 69, ha ha ha, it's backwards, but it's I liked it because it has a surprisingly good amount of what I would refer to as asymmetry of the legs, where you can't attack anything on me, but I can attack things on you if I know what I'm doing. So I always really liked it. I remember I've literally been doing it for about 4 years. I started jujitsu 5 years ago, and about a year into it, I remember when I first started doing jujitsu, I really liked kimuras, and I thought kimuras were really cool. And then I learned that toe holds are like basically just doing a kimura to people's feet. And then I thought I'd be like the toe hold kimura guy, and I was like, oh, I'll do this. And then I kind of got away from that, and I started doing outside heel hooks, and then it brought me back to doing toe holds. And I remember one time just messing around, I learned what donkey guard was, and then all those kind of like visions kind of like came together at one point, and then I was like, there's something here. And I started doing regular toe holds for a while, but to not much success. And then I just kind of played around with different prototypes of the Abe Lock, and then eventually I started doing Abe Locks. And then I just found I'd get submissions with it so often that I just kept doing it.
When would you say that you kind of had it in a place where you thought like, oh, this is something that is repeatable? This is something that I'm catching on a lot of people, or as I'm instructing people to do it, they're catching it on people.
Well, most people didn't believe it was a legit thing, honestly, until probably William Tackett started hitting it. I think a lot of guys in my training room, they would see me hit it, but it was kind of like, again, it's like, it's a joke. They'd laugh that like I'd call it the A block or something, but I'm like, I'm just trying to do good branding, because it's like, things like this are kind of uncommon, like people coming up with a new move that's actually unique and not just a copy of something else, or a repurposing or rebranding of the same thing. For me, I guess it just became one of those things that I felt like when I knew I could go into a competition, if I ever struggled, I could just immediately do an A block. Is probably at the time that I knew I was proficient. I started tracking them. I'm currently at 58 like A blocks in competition. And over half of those are against black belts or people who are at the black belt level. Like if it's like an advanced division or a black belt division, I've been able to hit A blocks on that. So just kind of like as I kept hitting them, I just got more and more confident that I could do them. So I think like I have like something like a 98% success rate or something like that.
Well, that is very impressive, but I would have to admonish you a little bit because when I started
Yeah.
seeing what was it, Abe Lock, where am I on this on your Instagram? I think I saw like a 54 or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And I thought about that and I go, 54 different victims? Like, this
Yeah.
is why I open with the people are going to start suing you. Like, there is
Yeah.
a little bit of, I think when people get caught in something, there's usually a little bit of humility, but there are degrees of humility. So there's always like,
Yeah.
oh, this armbar, that's a legit move.
That's the
I got
thing.
caught.
Yeah.
A block, people are like, that degree of humility probably goes down a little bit more. Like, hey, well, you know what? You got real lucky, man. Now you have results and repeated
Mhm.
results from that.
Yeah.
So it is hard to dispute that. Can you tell me what it felt like when you did see William Tackett giving you props? Because are we referring to his ADCC win that he
Yeah.
hit that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, William's interesting because I taught him it like a year and a half before he did it. I remember we were at a 10th Planet Austin, like training session or something like that. And I've always thought the Tackets are really good people, really cool dudes. And I remember William being humble like he is. He saw me hit it on a bunch of people and he's just like, hey, can you teach me how to do it? And I remember showing him it and getting the mechanics and I verified it. And he supposedly hadn't done it since that day. Or maybe he played around with it in training or something, but it wasn't like something you'd seen him do before that. But then I literally remember watching the match happen in front of me, and I already had a pretty good run. I think I tied for fifth at the ADCC trials that day, so I was feeling pretty proud of myself. I was like, "Oh, I did pretty good. I've been improving and improving and improving." But then that kind of like made me feel even better. That like him getting that is what blew up the move because he went in and he did the A block proper technique. It wasn't a toe hold. It was an A block official. And he went in and he did it, and it was just cool. Had a really good entrance and stuff, and I just think nobody really saw it coming. Nobody really trains that position, but now it's like the new buggy strangle, the buggy choke. Everybody does it right now. It's in the meta right now.
Yeah. No, and you know what? I could hear the Danaher and you correcting yourself. I'd be like, oh, I better not say
Mhm.
stuff. Choke,
Yeah,
choke, choke. No, don't say choke. I just might get back to him. No, it's
yeah.
perfectly fine. Here we don't discriminate. You can call it a choke. It's
Oh,
fine.
okay. Yeah,
I just it's kind of weird because the part of me that works as a uh copy editor just goes, it's fine. And if the copy editor brain goes, it's fine, then we get through it and we go through it.
Mhm.
But I will say, it was surprising for it. And I do have to apologize because we do a live broadcast for most ADCC and stuff like that. So when I watched it live, I didn't know exactly what to call it. And I don't
Yeah.
even know if somebody tried telling me it was an Abe Lock. I might have just said like, I don't know, maybe, sure. Because in the moment
Mhm.
things happen, you don't have enough time to react to it. And when I saw it, I just go, okay, cool. That's really good branding. It's really good for you to have that association with it. But you did mention you had some humility with that too as well, where you're like, I mean, I'm just doing it for marketing. I mean, honestly, it works. I want to know who
Mhm.
created it because then you want to know more about that person. And so even
Yeah.
though you recently won something that I was very interested in, I was like, no, you've been on my radar to talk to. It's just
Mhm.
been continuing to watch your progression as somebody who is a self-proclaimed scientist in the community. So I have to ask
Mhm.
this: why be a scientist in a community full of dum-dums? Because
Oh.
it's a struggle here, man. And I watched some of your video essays and you do an excellent job. But the minute you got to, I'm going to make some arguments and I have 6 points, I thought, oh no.
Oh.
Oh man, 6 points. That's a lot of words for people to follow.
That's more than 3. Yeah, you're talking about my YouTube channels, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Right, you're
Yes.
talking, like, my, like, criticisms of IBJJF and stuff like that.
Let's put it this
Um,
way. I am a
mhm,
former speech debate coach
mhm.
and competitor. This is right up my alley. I love this stuff.
Yeah.
So even when it's not me making the points and I'm listening to it, I do like to browse through other people's rhetoric and go, what are they really arguing here? And
Mm,
to your credit, I think you do a good job of saying, listen, I can trash this like everybody else, but I'm going to try and have an
mhm,
even handed approach to saying, here are the
mhm.
cons, here are the pros, make your
Yeah,
own
yeah.
decisions. But I would like to start an intelligent discussion on that. So, where did that come
Mhm.
from? When did you start wanting to do some of those video essay approaches, or what was compelling you to make those types of videos?
I guess I've always tried to be more philosophical about things like that. I think it's one thing to just start taking a dump on something, but, like, I try to see it from both sides. I've always kind of liked studying rhetoric. I think it's important. And if we're just going to be critical of something, I think we also have to like see like what it's done. Like it's easy to just take a dump on IBJJF and say, "Oh, advantages are stupid. I hate the rules. I don't like that they limit us with certain submissions." Those are true. But before there was ever ADCC or anything else, there was IBJJF. So we should at least be thankful for the legacy that was created. It's cool that we had a means of competition. So I guess I try to show some sort of a hat tip in that way. But I think it's like if we can't really allow ourselves to be open to criticism, positive and negative, then we can't really improve. I'd like there to be more like leagues and stuff like that in jujitsu, more opportunities to compete. I think it's fun. Like I think it's good for athletes, and I think it's ultimately just going to help the sport grow more.
That's great and good perspective. But I did want to compliment you. I found myself
Mm,
very much enjoying what it was that you were doing, and I know you're taking a momentary pause on it, but
mhm.
I'd
Yeah,
like to say, as somebody who will ingest a few of those every so often, I thought it was on the better side. So definitely return to that in the future should the spirit
yeah,
move you, because one of the things that I like to do on our programs is I like to infuse comedy arguments, which is,
yeah.
hey, listen, you'll kind of hear this a little bit more if you can kind of laugh at it so that it doesn't feel as heavy. But
No, that makes sense.
we do have a sport still where a lot of people are very I wouldn't say fragile, but they're very they don't like to be made fun of, or they have paper thin egos. And a lot of times I just say like, "Hey guys, there is criticism underneath this that I think is
Yeah,
valid, and if you don't address that criticism, it's not going to be me, a level-headed person trying to make a silly joke about it. It's going to be somebody in a comment section that's going to be a dick."
mhm.
So, I think
Yeah,
that you do a great job of elevating that. But I also see it as part of the influence that you have when you do your technique breakdowns. They're really good videos. You do an excellent job of
mhm,
putting those together.
mhm.
Talk me through like how you go about that process, because I'm a video editing nerd, and you mentioned something off camera, and I hope it's okay if I mentioned it. But something
Sure.
happened to your laptop, and
Oh,
my heart immediately sank because
yeah.
we've done live fight companions where we're drinking, and one of the guys spilled beer on my sound system and my computer, and
Mhm.
there's a zoom in on my face when you see me going like this is so, oh my god,
Yeah,
no.
no, it's terrible.
So what happened, and did that stall some of the process as well?
It was just one of those situations. I don't know if I necessarily say it stalled the process. I used to do a lot more YouTube, I think just maybe like 6 months ago,
Mm.
but basically spilled milk on my laptop. It was just one of those accidents and stuff like that. So, my old laptop, I had to replace it. My girlfriend let me borrow like one of her extra laptops and stuff, but it was a MacBook. And it's funny, they always talk about MacBooks being like really good for video editing. I just don't like the user interface or the software that much. So I mostly just kind of like use that time to start developing my reels a lot more and actually develop my subscription that I have on Instagram. So I spend a lot of my time just kind of like doing like minute and a half breakdowns on like techniques or uh concepts for jujitsu or something like that, and just kind of like posting a few of those a week, or taking any of my match footage and just trying to like do technical breakdowns. I guess one of the things that I've noticed is like on Instagram, there's like two types of jujitsu Instagrammers or influencers or social media type folk, where they're either a person who's just trying to be like a hardcore teacher, and they're arguably more popular on Instagram, or they're somebody that's a competitor, and then they basically don't make any technical videos because I think they're scared about showing their secrets and stuff like that, or they don't have the gift of talking or verbalizing what they do in actions. Whereas what I'm trying to do is kind of be both and be the combination, where I think that's actually kind of rare, because I think it's rare to be a good teacher, but I think it's also rare that a lot of these good teachers are also good athletes and stuff like that. So what I like to do that I think is a little different than most people is I actually show my competition footage, and then I do breakdowns on it, and I compete so much that I have a lot of footage to use.
Mm. Mm. Good stuff. And I mean, again, I'm happy to hear that you are getting your editing programs and your computer back up.
Mhm.
But it's not just anything. I mean, spilling milk of all things is
Oh, it's the
like,
worst.
man, that I'm just thinking about how it gunks it up. Because sometimes I don't know if you spill something like water on your computer or something. You got a few seconds to get one of those
Mhm.
towels and go, no, absorb very quickly. I can't have this happen.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Good Lord. All right. Well, let's
It's
move on.
tragic, tragic.
Again, you can see it like other video editors and other people who work in this industry. There is a visceral, like, you just feel it in your own soul, and it's very detrimental. I kind of want to transition here because I'm sure we're going to get into parts of your origin story, but
Mm.
I've seen, and this is the weirdest part about your Instagram bio, is the fact that you refer to yourself as a bachata poppy.
Oh, bachata papi, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I've researched enough, and it does seem like you are able to cross that bridge between dancing and jiu-jitsu. Now, in the
Mhm.
past, we've heard it from people like Gio or Boogie who say breakdancing, and you can kind of see how that formulates here. How did you
Mhm.
start putting this kind of connection together?
I mean, honestly, it was just a hobby. It was just one of those things. I actually been dancing longer than I've been doing jujitsu. I started dancing like 6 years ago, and I started doing jujitsu 5 years ago. I did dancing just because I wanted to meet girls. I was in the middle of Oklahoma in my PhD program for biochemistry. That's where like the whole scientist thing comes from. And I pretty much just did was doing biochem. I was hanging out with a bunch of nerds, and I was like, I think I need to meet some girls. Uh, so that was kind of how that came. And so bachata, it's a very intimate style of dance. It's actually kind of funny because it's very much like grappling, where I think like you have a lot of other dances and stuff like that where maybe there isn't like connection or something. Where essential bachata is kind of like a lot of physical body on body connection. And I guess in a weird way, I feel like the how to describe it, the connection that you have in dance is actually very similar to the connection in jujitsu. I always kind of say that dance and jujitsu are two sides of the same coin, where the goal of jujitsu is to stop dancing, but the goal of dancing is to stop fighting. So it's like they're exact opposites of each other.
I'm glad that you brought this up because one thing that I always find when I'm doing jiu-jitsu and there's really good songs that play,
Mhm,
I enjoy dancing. I like it. The problem that I
mhm,
find on my side for my movement is I don't think other people notice it as much as I do, but I feel like my timing is so intrinsic to the music
mm,
that I don't try to give it away. I have to actually go offbeat to make sure
mm,
that they're not just listening to the song and go like, "Oh, he's going to pass because the beat he's on the downbeat now."
yeah.
So I legitimately have to do it. But at the same point, I do find that that rhythm helps me when I get lost or it's been a long round or Lord forbid we're rolling
Mhm,
for through buzzers and whatnot. And my brain just is like, oh,
yeah.
okay. If I really like a song,
Mhm.
then it kind of helps me on that side.
For
I
sure.
guess I should be asking you this. Those of us who do jujitsu, if you get injured, you can't do the other thing. So what
Mhm.
ends up happening is, were you ever at all worried about taking any injuries when you're doing dancing, or is it fairly safe? Are you fairly good? Because I don't even want to go skiing if it takes me off time off the mats. And when people are
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
"Hey,
yeah,
let's
no.
go do this or let's skateboard," I'm like, "Dude, I have no coordination, and then I can't go to jujitsu on Monday, so probably not."
Mhm.
Have you ever
Uh,
had any of those concerns?
I would definitely say early on, it was I didn't really, I mean, for the first 2.5 years of jujitsu, it was just a hobby, it was just fun. It was just like, "Oh, hey, I want a new way to exercise." I was doing bodybuilding before, I was lifting, doing powerlifting. So, it was pretty much just like that, and I got kinda bored just being in the gym by myself all the time lifting, and yeah, after you hit so many PRs, you're just not seeing the PRs as frequently or consistently, so you kinda get bored, and you're like, "Ah, going to the gym, great, doing my thing, eating calories," and then you're not if you're not competing, it kinda like I'm a very competitive person. I get very into things when I get into them. So if I do bodybuilding, I'm gonna do everything. And I remember I actually tried to do like a bodybuilding show, but I was trying to basically starve myself for a show, like while being in grad school and trying to do one of like the biggest exams to get my master's degree, like in the time. So it just didn't really work, and they were coinciding. I was too stressed out about trying to do that, so didn't work. But as far as dancing goes, dancing was always kind of like the yin and my yang kind of deal. When I first started, the probably the biggest hazard is I would stay up super, super late because Latin dancing compared to like everything else, you get a lot of Latino culture. And Latino culture is like, you say the party starts at 9, everybody shows up at like 11, 11:30, and then everybody dances till 2:30 or 3 a.m. on a Thursday or a Tuesday or something. And then what happens is that everybody goes to work at like 10 a.m. the next day and they do it again, and you'll dance like 3 or 4 nights a week, and so it just becomes normal. I was only training like once a day, but now I train like twice a day every week or every day. But my volume of dancing has definitely gone down. So for sure, as I've tried to become more of a professional, I probably would say I've been a professional grappler now for at least 2.5 years.
Okay, so sorry about this as I'm double checking
Hmm.
my work here. I did see that, for the most part, I wanted to give a compliment. What looks
Hmm.
like you do very well is you look very smooth in your dancing,
Oh,
whereas
yeah,
your aggressiveness in your jujitsu. So when you're trying to tell me there's a similarity, there's a part of me that goes, okay, well, the Venn diagram, definitely the
yeah, like
smoothness is very different than the
very
aggression and the
different.
like very I mean it's composed when you're competing, so it's really cool to see that. But
Hmm.
like you almost have this own like sort of alter ego when you're doing this dancing that I'm seeing here, because I'm looking through your
Hmm.
greatest hits. Now here, this is your fault. You have a whole
Sure.
section dedicated to this. Now,
Oh
all
yeah,
I'm
all my
saying is,
dancing.
when you do this and you're looking at every one of these girls, it's like, I think you accomplish your mission here, sir. Like
Yeah,
I think you're gonna do
yeah.
all right if I'm a betting man on you getting some action at some point. But I want to say
Yeah.
it does seem very, very cool that you're able to kind of bridge those things together and make your own philosophy from it. But I also want to ask this, because at the top of your Instagram, it just reads fighting and dancing. So I love the fact that even though you're like, I don't get to dance as much, it still is co-billing. Like
Yeah.
it's still right on top of there. And I like the idea that you have a larger umbrella of fighting and then dancing as well. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's in there. It's all part of it. It's still part of my personality. Like I'm dating a Latina, and so it's like it's a big part of how we communicate and how we get along. Like I just went to Mexico like in the last week, and it's just a normal part of how we communicate. I think sometimes the best conversations I have with my girlfriend are the nonverbal ones, and I think that's ultimately kind of like a normal conversation. Like it's gonna sound a little weird, and maybe I'm getting a little sidetracked, but like I think humans have only doing like spoken language, I think, for like 10,000 years, but like Homo sapiens are about 200 to 300,000 years old. So that means like for the majority of our existence, we were probably nonverbal in some way. And we had like kind of basically very unsophisticated proper languages that we could speak. Or very rudimentary, and then even before that, whatever precursors like Australopithecus or anything like that before Homo sapiens didn't really have a spoken language. So I think dance kind of allows us to do something that I think music and like sounds and appreciations of rhythm probably existed before language. Like we like drums and we like things like that. So I think it helps to tap into a form of symbiotic communication that maybe we had beforehand, and that's more intrinsic and more natural. Like, I think I read somewhere that humans have only been able to read, or only been making a common practice of reading silently, for like 400 or 500 years. So like us being able to just read a book and not talk is actually like kind of a new thing. Like we used to have to read aloud as we read.
Well, so look at a comment section, probably,
Mhm.
probably a little bit sooner than that even.
Yeah.
I do want to point this out that you brought up Mexico, and I was really happy about that. Now, granted, whenever we try
Mhm.
to schedule these things, I will always reach out after somebody wins, but I think you made the smart decision to go on a little bit of a vacation, go to
Sure.
Mexico, and I'm never going to interrupt that. So even
Mhm.
though I was like, oh man, we'll wait for another week or so, I was stoked for you because going to Mexico, it looked like a great time. And then
It was
on
cool.
top of
Yeah.
it, just to really drive home the fact that there's a PhD on the other side of this conversation, like you had reviews about Mexico on your Instagram
Mhm.
stories.
Oh.
So what were you reviewing? Was it the food? Was it the culture? Like what were you summarizing for people who followed you?
I think, I guess, I should also correct you. I was in a PhD program, but I actually never ended up getting my PhD, but I do have
Don't
my
don't don't
master's
don't
degree.
tell people that. They're dumb. They'll
Okay,
literally
don't
just
tell 'em,
call
let 'em
you
think I'm a
doctor.
doctor. Yeah.
Just
But,
don't ruin that. It's good marketing for you, sir.
sure, sure. Yeah, sure. I mean, that's why I just say scientist. It's easy for people to appreciate. But like as far as the reviews go, I guess I kind of just do that for me. And I think that there are two types of posts you can make on Instagram. There are posts that you can make to get followers, and then there are posts to reward the people who follow you, which might not be to get new followers. Like, but like I think people actually honestly enjoy some of like people who can like have nuanced perspectives or deeper thoughts on things like that. So I guess uh I mean if they're following you on Instagram, it's largely because they like your personality, and I think it's probably best to be authentic as much as you can because you won't go crazy. And so I guess I find that interesting, and so I just kind of like putting that stuff on my Instagram. It shows that I'm not just a one-dimensional grappling person. Like I have a lot of other interests. I do a lot of other things, and I guess part of that I think bleeds into my jujitsu because part of what I like about jujitsu is there's a lot of depth, there's a lot of technique, there's a lot of thought that goes into it. It's a very beautiful art to study, but I also think you can see the same thing emitted in other parts of life as well.
I would agree with you on that. And I do appreciate the fact that there is thought that you put into your posts because I don't even know that I have thought when I put into posts. Mostly it's just a reaction of, oh, I like this. This is what it
Mm-hmm.
is. So there is that. We're going to come back to your competitive nature in a minute here, but I wanted to stick on this idea of Mexico. So, give us a kind of picture of what you were doing during that time because I know whenever I hear someone's going to a place, I Instagram
Hmm.
stalk their food. So I'm
Oh
literally
yeah.
like, I don't care what it is. I'm watching to see when you're going to put up some food. And anybody who does that,
Hmm.
for me, it's like a reward. And then sometimes it's even inspiration that I'll go and start cooking that kind of a meal. But for
Hmm.
you, what did the experience of Mexico feel like?
Mexico was pretty cool. I mean, I've been to other countries and stuff like that before. I feel like all the countries I've visited are always super Catholic, not intentionally, but they've always been. I've been to Austria, I've been to Italy, I've been to the Vatican, and now I've been to Mexico. So I guess it was kind of interesting to see the different types of Catholic cultures, especially Mexican being very very unique compared to the more Germanic or Italian styles or approaches to Catholicism. But the food was honestly super, super good. The thing is, I remember if you read one of my posts, I was talking more so the overall experience was like greatly enhanced by the service industry. I felt like the service that we received, like the waiters and all that stuff like that that were waiting on us, they just made us feel like royalty the entire time. I've been joking with people and saying like I think they did everything but chew our food and then baby bird into our mouths. Like it was it was one of those kind of situations where you're like I feel like sometimes in America, I feel guilted into giving people tips where I don't think they did anything past like give me a $12 coffee, and I feel like the coffee's so expensive that you might as well just take your tip out of that. And then the second thing is like they're working their butts off, so you're like, oh, I could see myself giving this guy $20 because this guy literally made it like the most memorable experience I've had. Like, he made the vacation like special.
Dude, that's awesome, man. And, I think you might have been kind of circling around this point, which is I don't care what you do. Like, if you take an appreciation for what you do, it'll carry you further in life than anything else. Like if
Yeah.
you're going to be a cook, be the best cook and take the
Mhm.
appreciation into it. And I would always give the example of I used to work at NBC Universal, and the best
Mhm.
employee there was the guy who was the crosswalk guy. And he was
Mm.
there for years and, years. And I didn't visit the studio for a number of 5, 6 years or so. And then I walked by and he was on service. And I was just like, hey, man, what's going on? And he's just so energetic there. He's like, hey, what's up, Raph? And I was like, are you fucking with me? How the fuck do you remember my
Mhm.
name? Like,
Yeah.
that was his job. He knew every single one of those people. And I don't think I spent that much time with him. But I go, man, that's a guy who's good at his job. Make sure we give him his fullest. So I'm very happy to
Well,
hear
it's
that.
like
And
the yeah, it's like there's like a certain nobility to taking your job seriously. And I guess I don't know how some people can choose certain jobs to they just do it well. Like that's a janitor. Like that guy is a black belt in being a janitor. Some people just are black belts at cooking, black belts at other things, and some people just have the right personality for certain types of jobs. Like I know like some people go to like butler school, but they
mm,
become like the most badass butler ever. And it's like it's one of those really interesting things that I appreciate when people find a passion or they can make themselves passionate enough to deliver like the top tier black belt level service for whatever they're doing. So there's something special about that.
what's a great transition into getting how you found this as a passion. So tell me about young Abe. Where does young Abe find jiu-jitsu? And before that, were you a sports guy? I mean, it
Mhm,
would seem natural because
mhm,
obviously you're competitive and that would be a good outlet for it. But what was
mhm.
young Abe like?
Young Abe was like I guess I started playing football when I was like 4 years old. It was one of those things like my dad got me into. Like kind of growing up, I remember I joined like the local. I was so I'm from Chicago originally, like the area of like the suburbs of Chicago, I should say more specifically. And football pretty common part of the culture there. And my dad was actually really hesitant to get me in sports early because he thought I'd burn out and not want to do sports like for forever if he like felt like he forced me as a kid. But instead, I got into sports, and I think it kind of like helped my athleticism grow. So I've kind of always been active. I did do some wrestling when I was like probably from like seventh or eighth grade till I was like throughout high school. But it's one of those things where I don't really feel like I took it as seriously as the culture I was around was in it because Illinois is like a big wrestling culture. But I pretty much only wrestled for like 3 months of the year. And then most of it, it's really interesting. I feel like since I've come to like New Wave and since I've been training with like John, it was much less sophisticated. But I think mostly what it gave me that I still use today is I feel like it made me pretty mentally tough, and I knew how to like get through like a grueling practice. Like maybe that all the techniques we learned like the smoothest or more nuanced, like top tier Harvard level analysis. This is how you train. But I remember just being told to do bleachers for like 2 hours or something, and there's something to just doing hard stuff that I think carries with you. And then I used that to actually get through the military. So I was also in the army for 6 years, and kind of like all of that, I think helped me to have a good sense of will and be able to just kind of persevere through stuff. And then in combination with the PhD program, I think that's why jujitsu kind of appealed to me through all of that. Fast forwarding through like 20 years of my life, but I think all of the combination of that kind of appealed to me about jujitsu because it's like tough and you have to be resilient, which a lot of that comes from like football or wrestling that I did growing up. And then there's also kind of the nerdy aspect, which I think like where the sciencey aspect of me also comes in. So you could kind of use both tools, like a left and right hand, to kind of get the job done.
Okay, good. I'm glad that you acknowledged that you were going past a lot of stuff. The good news about me, I actively
Yeah,
listen. So we're going to stop and
sure.
go back a little bit here.
Yeah.
Let's go back to this. So you were starting in football, you got a good mechanic of how you're going to build your systems. In other words, you understand the approach and the toughness of it, and that's great. Wrestling comes into play. And what do you think that gravitated you to wrestling at that time? Because sometimes it's a natural thing. A lot of people who do football inevitably go to wrestling. And you mentioned living
Mhm.
in Chicago. I went to school at Illinois State University, and my wife is from
Oh, okay,
Illinois. So
cool. There
I
you go.
definitely got a good experience, and I love going to visit there. But you're right, it
Mhm.
is embedded in the culture. So was it just that it was the next season and it just kind of was the right thing to do? Or did you have an interest in it and just thought, let me see what this is like?
It's like a few things. It's one, I come from a family that actually has like pro wrestling culture actually. Like so my great grandpa is like cited as like the founder of female wrestling in the United States for like WWE style fighting, but back when it was like actual fighting. And my grandma was a pro wrestler, and my grandpa was a pro wrestler. So it was kind of like one of those things. But basically, all they did was eat cheeseburgers all day, smoke cigarettes, and then just beat the crap out of each other in a ring. That was pretty much what it was. So I guess that kind of like culture was always instilled in me, like from a young age, that hey, it's normal. We fight, we do stuff like that. So I guess we always roughed house as kids. We always did that thing. Football was maybe just like a way that I kind of got indoctrinated into like, oh, this is what a normal exercise routine is like. You go run up the hills, you come back down, you do sprints, you do push-ups, you do things like that, as opposed to being some people, I think they just go their entire lives out doing sports, and then when they try to do an exercise routine, they have no idea how to be disciplined or how to be consistent or what to even expect or how to deal with being mentally tired or something while you're exercising. But I think the idea of the team sports kind of helped push me along. I was also very, very fortunate to have several strong male figures in my life growing up. Like my father didn't really stick in the picture for forever, even though ironically he's the one that got me into sports originally. But there was like a football coach or there was a wrestling coach or somebody that just kind of like pulled me to the side and said, "Hey, I'm gonna make you good at this, or I'm gonna help you along." And basically, they gave me like some sort of paternal guidance or energy or something like that that just said, "Hey, I think there's something unique or special to you. You're gonna be under my tutelage for like a little bit." So I had like a football coach that was like that. And then I had a wrestling coach like that. I remember I wasn't even gonna do any high school wrestling, and then what happened was I had a guy named Coach Crane who basically saw me in football. He was like one of the lineman coaches, and he just saw that I was like very spirited and eager to kind of like work. And I think he looked that he noticed that I really liked, or I really what do I say, responded well to paternal or masculine like guidance and stuff like that. And so he saw that I was very coachable. And so he basically told me one day, he's like, "Abraham, you have no choice. You're going to be on my wrestling team." And I'm like, "Okay." And so then I kind of was like, kind of like peer pressured into doing wrestling. And so I did it anyway. And it actually ended up being a pretty good thing for me. I think, brought me a lot of stability when I was in high school that was needed.
I like to tell people a good coach knows how to work off of somebody's competitiveness. Like
Hmm.
what I like to do as part of my approach is, I teach a primarily kickboxing, MMA kind of gym. And so I'll do their
Hmm.
jiu-jitsu classes. So they don't need to warm up. I don't really like that sort of stuff anyway. So I have
Hmm.
them start with rolls, just light,
Hmm.
and then make observes. And then all of a sudden, when it's time to come back in, I know exactly what they're weak on. And
Hmm.
I may have had a game plan of where I wanted to go that day, and then I throw it out the window. I'm like, you guys suck at mount escapes. Like, what the fuck is
Hmm.
happening? And then we kind of
Yeah.
work on that. And what I like to do with them is I give them only a short amount of time to drilling because in my brain, you need some drilling, but not reliant on drilling. So what I'll
Mm.
do is I go, all right, you've learned it for 5 minutes. Now you're going to work in that place. Good luck. Godspeed, everybody.
Mhm.
And what ends up
Yeah.
happening is people will be like, hey, I didn't feel I had enough time on it. And I go, no, I know you're competitive. So now I know you want to win. And when that
Mhm.
happens, they end up wanting to learn those small details that give them the competitive edge that make them win sooner
Mhm.
than later. And so when they come up to me, they're like, oh, I don't know how I learned it faster. And I'm like, well, you did it. You
Mhm.
had to create a reason why. You had to create a
Yeah.
want to get out of that faster or a
Mhm.
want that somebody's beating you at this. So that coach scouted you very well and said, like, nah, he's competitive. I think he
Mhm.
knows he wants to do this, but he needs a little push. And so that's a
Mhm.
wonderful thing to have in your life. So that obviously goes well. But we're gonna pause here again.
Mhm.
So why become the disappointment of the family and decide not to do pro wrestling? Because obviously a huge pro wrestling fan here. So you're
Yeah.
just dusting this very quick mention of having a family that's so indebted to it. So that's a very cool and unique thing into itself. Do you think that
Mhm.
had any subconscious sort of rationale that brought you more to this? Because maybe you're not doing professional wrestling, but you
Mhm.
are doing more of the old throwbacks of when they would go town to town and they're like, hey, we're going to actually
Yeah.
go,
Like
but
like
wait, we
catch
can't
wrestling or
travel.
something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I guess I don't know. It just kind of always was normalized that we like to grapple in my family, and it's one of those things. I actually didn't know my grandpa. My grandpa died when my mom was like 6 months old, so I think that part of what happened was there was kind of a break in the chain where it was never really iterated to me past like old stories, and then my grandma didn't really like to talk about it very much. But it was always kind of one of those things that I was told by my mom. I was like, "Oh, this is just a normal expectation for you guys. This is like a part of our culture and our family and stuff." And so I guess it just kind of became normal. And I always liked wrestling and grappling with my brothers. I have two brothers. So I think probably I had middle child syndrome. And so naturally getting picked on by my younger and older brother kind of made me want to like push forward and do something about it.
Okay, and listen, dude, I'm not one to give feedback on your techniques at all,
Hmm.
but I do notice that on your subscription based service, you were teaching
Hmm.
people a figure four. And I wouldn't say anything, but now I know that you're immersed in the pro wrestling side. Sir, there's a very different figure four. It's way
Oh,
more devastating. And so when I saw that, I was like,
yeah.
oh, maybe I'm going to learn. No, I'm not. I'm going to learn the dumb jujitsu version. Okay, whatever. There's no selling your
Okay.
profile into that figure four. So
Mhm.
I'm just saying, you teach that. I think people are going to pay a little bit more for it. But
Oh, I got to pro wrestling my reels up a bit. Yeah.
you 100%
Yeah.
do. I mean, listen,
Just hit
dude.
hit him with the chair. Hit him with the chair. Yeah.
we have a dumb thing that we do every year called WWE BJJ, and it's a hybrid of pro wrestling and jiu-jitsu. And the way I tell it to people is we take submissions from guests of the show and from fans and friends. But one of the things
Mhm.
I like to do on the selling point is I go, think of it like Jiu-Jitsu Halloween. Nobody can be a dick when they're competing. This allows you to be the biggest asshole you want to be. So, however it is
Mhm.
you want to play that version of yourself, you can, yeah,
Mhm.
hit somebody with a chair, but you can also cheat. You can also be the bad guy that you wish you could be instead of being like, I want to raise my hand, dude. This dude sucks. Fuck him. So,
Yeah.
we come up with a lot of dumb gimmickry for that.
No, it's funny. I actually that reminds me of I had an idea for like a reel series. Because I've done like different types of series. Like Wipeout Wednesday was one I did for a while. I did that for like a year and a half. I did like Fixed Jits Friday or things like that. One thing I was thinking of doing is like taking down facts with Abe, and then what I would do is I'd start a reel where I would do a takedown, and then I just say something like, "Did you know that the human head is like 17 pounds on average?" or something like that. And you just say something stupid at the end that's like a real fact. It's like, oh, did you know that there's a giant pumpkin that can grow 41 pounds on average a day? Like, and then but you do like a Harai Goshi or a double leg or something as the opening and then taking down facts. So you'd like do a takedown and then you'd quickly say some facts. Yeah.
I mean, I'm into it. I think it's a great idea. I think you should run with
I thought it
that.
would be funny. Yeah, maybe.
Listen,
Maybe when I.
because Forrest Griffin has a beautiful fun fact Friday that he does. And
Hmm,
the thing that he does with it is he just gets really excited about telling you some weird dad fact about some
hmm,
city or something like that. So the only thing it doesn't have is it doesn't have some kind of violence that precedes it. And I'm a big fan when it
hmm.
comes to comedy of Conan O'Brien said it best, act as if everything is normal. So if
Yeah.
you do a takedown and it is 100% grounded in, it looks like it's going to be a technique, or hey, here are three things you need to do to fix this, and somebody like expects that, and you just subvert it by
Mhm.
teaching them facts, people might be hanging on to the reel at the very beginning. Like,
Yeah.
is he going to teach me how to do it, or is it? Oh,
No,
it's
no,
just the
it's just,
fact. And
yep.
I feel like once they get in on the joke, you can come up with more and more different
More
ways.
stuff.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
like subverting that sort of thing.
Well, especially like a big thing about Instagram Reels is you got to figure out how to make it like cocaine to these people. You got to make it addictive. Like, okay, I'll do a 6 second video and then that'll get like 40,000 views. And then you get like maybe like 100 like follows out of that, something like that. So you got to figure out how to get people to want to watch your stuff because it's super competitive. People's attention is the hardest thing to maintain.
Yeah, I like to tell people. And by the way, who is the friend behind you?
That's my girl. That's my baby girl. That's Sally.
Aw,
Yeah, she
she's
was
a
just laying on
sweetheart.
the bed. She
No,
is a
I
sweetie.
saw her moving, and I was like, well, I clocked that. So,
Mhm.
hello,
Yeah.
Sally. Very nice to meet you. I do want to point this out. You mentioned that, but even when we do these videos, and I have a social media guy who will cut them, I hate if the punchline is at 16 seconds. If it's right
Oh,
at
yeah.
14 seconds, at least they hear the joke and maybe they want to see the rest of the video. But if there's
Mhm.
like a long winded sort of setup to it, just tears on my face when I go to post it on my like stories and I
Mhm.
go, oh, okay, let's see
Yeah.
where it cuts off.
Mhm.
Fuck. It's
Yeah.
right before the
Well, it's
joke.
yeah, it's also it's right on the stories too, because the story will only show so much of a reel, so you have to like account for that. There's like all this other stuff you have to think about, and I see a lot of people who try to become like social media content creators that are grapplers, but they don't do the homework of figuring out like how to make something interesting to watch or how to do it. Because I see a lot of people, then they do the exact wrong thing. They have like a 4 minute match, they just post the whole video. They're
Yeah.
like, oh, a ton of people are gonna watch this, and then they see 4 minutes, and they're just like, I'm not even gonna look at that, buddy. You might have your grandma write a comment and say, "That's amazing, honey," if she uses Instagram. But the thing is like get rid of all the dead space. If something's not happening 100% of the time, no one's gonna want to watch that video.
I do have to say, I think the only thing that has given me some kind of peace over the year of doing
Mhm,
this kind of a show is I have really dug into my old man status of like, here's what it is. Take it or leave it. If you like it, don't. I don't want to get
mhm.
caught into trying to do something that we're not. So it's always
Fair
like, all
enough.
right, I think there's going to be this. But there are some videos that I know, man, this one's going to be hard to sell in 15 seconds. Like,
No,
but you know what?
definitely,
Here's what it
definitely.
is. And the nice part about it is that you think even if they don't do the numbers you wish they would do, or like, oh man, this one that I tried nothing on did great numbers. Someone
Mhm.
still in real life comes up to you and goes, I love that one. I was like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so you're the one
No,
guy that loved that one? All right. Thanks, man. And you
no.
laugh because there's a part of your brain that just goes like, oh, there's such an inundation of people will say, "Oh, this doesn't do this number, or this doesn't do this number." I'm like, "Who are you guys? Research companies? Like, who
Mhm.
gives a shit what
Yeah.
number it does? Did you like it or not? That's the real question."
Yeah, that's why I say it's like there's 2 types of reels you make. There's ones you make for your followers, and there's ones you make to get more people to follow you. So it's like I think the ones that are like the ones that easily go viral are like 5 seconds long. They are like you dumping somebody or doing a cool move or getting a rare submission or something like that. Put some cool viral music on it. Those ones, it's just so people get out there and they see you. But then if you can get them to your profile and they're more willing to look at like a 20-second video or something, that's the one you make for your followers because that's
Yeah.
what, at least for me, I think largely my following is very educational based. I think they just like my personality, but then they probably also like the fact that I explain a lot of techniques for free. So I think that's where they go. They come for the cool video initially, but then they stay because the lengthy stuff that gives a lot of good description and stuff.
You do an excellent job in your description, so I would definitely affirm that. And I like that you are seeking out a educated jujitsu fan because sometimes we get what we get, and I love the fact that when we do the show, every once in a while, somebody will throw me in the comment section when we have a live show, and then they just make
Hmm.
me entertained because I go, "This is really dumb," but God bless if
Yeah.
that's our demo. You're our demo.
Hmm.
Great, good to see
Hmm.
you. Welcome to the party. But I also think there's a kind of a thing that when we do our live broadcasts, I think they kind of want to be roasted. So I try not to make fun of people outright very badly. I just go like, all right, well, it's
Hmm.
like going to the comedian show and then being in the front row. You chose this life. I didn't. All
Hmm.
right. But yeah, that's kind of our way of doing it. I want to go back to this. You mentioned that you were inherently competitive. So, one thing I like to ask people who are very competitive is what is the most embarrassing aspect or thing that you have been competitive about that you went, maybe this might be a little too far?
Could you give me like an example, like what you would
Absolutely. So,
mean?
have you had a game night with friends and been like, this game is sorry, is not ending until I win? Have you had a moment where maybe you were out with friends and it was a dart game, and
Mhm.
let's say a girlfriend was like, we should go home, and you're like, I didn't win yet? Have you had one of those
Oh,
moments where you,
yeah. I
in the
mean,
back of your mind, said, this might be too far?
probably like it's one of those things where my girlfriend might try to pull like a little prank on me, or something like that, and I would say like she doesn't know the war that she's beginning. Like it's one of those things where it's always like she might do this little thing where she might play with like she'll take like a blueberry or something off my plate, and I'm like, I'm gonna out blueberry the heck out of you, and like it's like you take a little blueberry from me, I'm gonna take like 15 from you. Like it's just one of those things. Like I don't know, it's like stuff that doesn't have to be competitive that I'll kind of make it into a thing, or she'll tease me, but she can't handle it as well as I can. Because it's like I was in the army, for example, and it's very normal that dudes just when it's just around dudes, you just rib each other
Yeah.
over and over, and so that's probably things like that where I'm a little too I go a little too far on that.
glad you at least have some recognition of it, but I do want to
Yeah.
point something out. How the hell do you out blueberry somebody? Like, I know
Yeah.
you're giving me a theoretical, or maybe it did
Yeah.
really happen where she stole a blueberry from
Mhm.
you, but the
Yeah,
fact
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
you're creating this kind of description of like, you don't know what you just did. You stole one. I'm gonna steal a whole bag of blueberries from you right now. Like, that
Yeah.
is slightly odd. Do you have a
Mhm.
particular thing that you like to be competitive at outside of dancing or fighting? Whether it's a board game, a video game, like what occupies your time or allows you to kind of be competitive in a different space?
I don't know. I do those because that is where I can channel them. Because I
Mm,
usually don't really care to be that competitive outside of those spaces, I'd say. And even dance, I wouldn't say I'm normally that competitive. Like, I'm competitive about if I was to do it, like, I like to be the most real when I'm dancing. Like,
mm,
I don't like dances where I can't really just have fun and go beepity boppo. I'm not trying to impress people. I'm literally just trying to, like, vibe with whoever I'm dancing with and stuff. And a lot of people you'll notice can get particularly insecure or self-conscious when they're dancing, and my goal is to try to make them feel at ease so that hey, we're just having a nice little conversation. It's a nonverbal conversation. Whereas jiu-jitsu, I mean, even in then it's like still jiu-jitsu is like a dance though, where it's like I feel like uh, if I'm wanting to be competitive, I can only do it with certain people that I know that can take it. It's like one of those things because like a lot of my teammates they can take it and stuff, but there's sometimes when you're going to like a public training a lot of people will get competitive, but they get in kind of like the not, hey, bro, we're gonna like I respect you. That's why I'm being competitive. Like I actually find a lot of college wrestlers who come in can handle like a friendly competition a lot better than the average person because I think they get off on that. But like I don't feel like I actually have a lot of avenues outside of actual competition that I can use those kinds of things. But as far as like going competitive goes, I actually say I try to not let it come too much into my regular life. Maybe it's one of those things where like maybe me and my girl like again, I think that's probably why my girlfriend gets the brunt of it is because it'll leak into our relationship where she'll try to out blueberry me. So
I'm so glad that I got to the
yeah.
part of this that I really understand. I'm like, no, just don't touch
Mhm.
this dude's food is really what it comes down to.
Oh
And I
man,
think you might be
yeah.
okay.
Well, one thing we've had to learn is like we've been dating for probably a year, year and a half, and it's one of those things where she'll start just taking my food off my plate, and it's like it's I don't know, it's like a respect thing, I guess. It's not that I don't want to give her food, but it's more so I think guys value respect and girls value love as like their highest things in a relationship. And I think that guys could give a damn about feeling loved if they're not respected, whereas I think girls can be okay with being disrespected if they feel sufficiently loved. From my experience anyway.
Yeah, you need more time with that Latina. What I can tell you is
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, what I can tell you is somebody who's been married for 10 years.
Yeah.
That's going to happen more than you think. And
Oh,
it
probably
gets
yeah.
worse. And, credit to one of my good friends. I just went to his wing joint. He's a former UFC
Mm,
fighter. And he opened up a hot wings place out in Orange County. And I
mm,
finally got the chance to
nice.
go to it. So stoked. But on the ordering menu, up above, there's one that says, "My girlfriend's not hungry." And it's a meal that's perfectly portioned out in case your girl wants to like steal part of your meal. And I
That's pretty
thought,
funny.
yo, I sent him a text and I was like, yo,
It
bro,
has,
that's
like, another extra wing or something like that, and you're like,
genius.
"Ah, that's brilliant." Yeah.
So I was very happy about him there. I want to ask this as well. You mentioned you went in the army. You were in the army for 6 years. So what prompted
Mhm.
that? Is that something that came as just kind of a call of service? Was it something that you kind of felt like you had family members who did it? Where did that instinct come from?
Desperation and lack of direction.
Mm,
So, I didn't really know what else to do, and I wanted to get the heck out of my house. I feel like I was getting too big for the shoes I was wearing kinda thing.
mm,
Uh, I just wanted to get out. I wanted to go to college, and I knew that there was no conceivable way that I was gonna expect my family to help me pay for college. We didn't really have a lot of money growing up, and I thought the next logical thing to do is, well, the military will help me do it. I'm a pretty good athlete, so I guess I'll do the military and kinda, like, pay for my own way. And the military, I joined when I was in 17, or when I was 17, I was a junior in high school still, and I did a thing called a split option. So I went to boot camp basically in my summer between my junior senior year, and then I went to my job training, which is basically just super boot camp because I was an infantryman, and after I graduated high school, and then while I was in college and stuff, I was able to like work and practice because I chose to do the National Guard. So it kind of all worked out because of that.
What would you say was perhaps the biggest thing that you took away from there? Because it does seem like you're very good at being regimented, but I do argue in learning a little bit about your history from your sports side, the beginnings of that
Hmm.
can be traced all the way back there. It just seems like it might have shorted
Hmm.
up a lot more in your Army experience.
No, definitely the sports thing. Actually, I think is where I gained a lot of more of my discipline and stuff like that. I guess for me, I'm kind of autistic as heck. I think like many people in jujitsu, where I think what the army did is it kind of forced me to have to learn how to deal with other grown men. Whereas I think before then, I feel like I kind of got like teased for maybe not knowing how to talk to people or saying some straight up like crazy things to people. But when I was in the army, you're kind of like forced to have to rely on each other, and you're forced to have to learn how to communicate and get along well for the sake of doing things. So I think I learned a lot how to communicate with other dudes. Not very good at communicating with women, but I was in an all male unit for like the entirety of my time there, so I feel like I learned how to kind of like navigate the male hierarchy and how to communicate with other dudes that come from different backgrounds and walks of life and stuff like that. And so I guess that was probably one of the biggest things I took away was just how to like talk to authority and how to be respectful and how to like essentially communicate what you need and what you have and what you can do in a way that doesn't make people feel like they're getting stepped on or disrespected or things like that. So I think respect was probably a big thing I learned from the military.
Probably bodes well for then going on over and joining the new wave group,
A
especially
hundred
when
percent. Yeah,
you kind of
yeah.
find your way there and you're just like, oh, there is a structure in place here, and there is your general, if you would. So you
Hmm.
basically kind of go through those different levels. So I'm sure that was a cakewalk to
But
make that
you
transition.
definitely learn in the army that you can just say like yes sir is like a good way to like kind of not get someone off your back, but they can't get pissed off at you if you're being like there's certain like responses you just get like yes sir, no I didn't know that sir, yes sir, no sir. Like that's that I remember I didn't say any of that kind of stuff until I got into the military, but then it's like oh this just works with talking to guys. It's just like no sir, yes sir, and it's like oh he's giving the default baseline respect. He's showing that he's not giving any ill intent by saying it that way. But if I say no, yes, people can oftentimes misinterpret that as just like not respectful. But unless you say no sir or yes sir or something like that, if you just say a very candid yes sir, no sir, like people will usually give you the benefit of the doubt until you give them otherwise reasons. So
Yeah, I actually do something where to the younger kids, if they walk in, I'm like, yes, sir, come in here. And they'll be like, why are you doing that? I was like, because they need to learn.
hmm
Like, I
yeah,
don't
it's
want, I want them
respectful.
to understand this is the way to talk to people. And like how much further you will get when you just have the
Hmm.
basic minimums of knowing how to chat with people. So
Yep.
it is very funny. And I go, they can always lose it because
Hmm.
that could very quickly go away where you don't get the sir, you just get a command and you just get told what to do. I'm not really feeling that yet. I go, but I let them have the opportunity first. And I
For
watch
sure.
them interact with other people in the gym and I see them saying the same thing and it just makes me so relaxed where I go, all right, the kids are going to be good. Now the hard part is they also pick up my mouth and you know, when you're a little bit of a smartass and you do curse a bunch, I kind of have a rule where I go to some of my kids. I was like, y'all can't curse in my class if you're underage.
Mm.
Like, I can
No,
curse. You can't. You can go
yeah, you
out
can't.
somewhere else and curse. I don't give a shit. But if you're in my class, no. And they're like, it was funny because they're like, why? I was like, because they're feeling a little too old, too quick, where they think they can
Uh,
talk to you and be like, what the fuck's up, dude? And I go, dude, he's a child and he's not talking
yeah,
to a coach like that, man.
no, I understand.
So anyway, okay. Can you describe to me your very first jiu-jitsu class? Do you remember what it felt like, where you were, what it was, and how you felt in that very first instance?
I remember there's actually two instances where I guess you could cite as like my first class. I remember back, if you are familiar with the University of Illinois, I went to Northern Illinois University for undergrad,
Mm-hmm.
and I joined this jujitsu club like probably like a year after I graduated high school or something like that. And I managed to be a part of the team or the club for like a month or something like that, a month and a half. And then the president, I think, just didn't like me because I think I was kind of like, I'll be honest, I probably was kind of a spaz back then. but I had like a bit of the wrestling background, and I think people, I remember they taught me like an Americana, and I was able to just kind of like wrestle fuck people, like not like in a great wrestle, but it just shows how like terrible everybody was in that club, that I could pass them without basically any training and just Americana everyone. And I kept calling it the Abacana. And like, so kind of like a precursor to naming something after myself, right? So I kept doing Americanas to everybody, and I thought I was like a god. And but I think the president, he didn't really care for me very much. I felt like he was sort of an insecure person, but also probably kind of was probably a spaz and a little out of control. But I remember they ended up not letting me continue going to the club. So I was like, all right, I'll go do something else. So it was one of those weird entrances where it's probably for the best, because if I had gone down that road, I might have gotten more into gi, and then maybe I would have never actually like learned to be more scientific and then use that to repurpose it. So I only learned good habits when I did start doing jujitsu, because I think sometimes what's really interesting when you get into jujitsu or just hobbies in general, if you have a bad teacher, they teach you the wrong way, you develop bad habits, right? And it's very
Yeah.
hard to change bad habits. It's easier just to develop good ones from the beginning. So having a bad teacher can be pretty harrowing. The second time, I would say that first time I joined jujitsu, I remember it was at a Carlson Gracie place when I went to Oklahoma when I was in grad school. And I just started like taking classes with this one Brazilian guy named Sandro. And I remember a friend of mine, he would later become a much bigger part in my life. His name is Mark, and he was a brown belt at the time. And he started talking all kinds of shit to me. He kept like, I told him my name was Abe, and then he kept calling me Gabe. And I was just like, and I remember I went up to him and I corrected him. I said, actually, my name is Abe. And he's like, okay, Gabe. And he just like fucked with me. And then basically what he did is he had me like fight all the blue belts and stuff from like the first day, but I actually I was Americaning the blue belts from the get go. And he's like, oh no. So I remember I eventually, he could beat the crap out of me at first, but he had to do like, he had to work hard, because I think I was just a really good athlete at the time. I was coming from powerlifting and bodybuilding. I was like 220, 225 or something at the time. I was a big dude. So I was able to just kind of goon people with physical ability, and it kind of probably spoke to how not technical they were. But that was kind of like my first intro. But I actually got my blue belt within 5 months of jujitsu. So to the credit of the professor at that gym, I think he saw the potential in me and wanted to reward it.
That's wonderful. Gabe, I want to ask a question.
Yeah.
When did you know that you actually fell in love with jiu-jitsu? So it's a primal question that we ask here on the show because
Uh,
you ended up not finishing your doctorate, which meant this had to be pretty convincing of a hobby that becomes more of a passion, becomes more of a lifestyle, becomes more of a line of work. So what makes you decide that you want to go in on this?
I guess I'd actually say it was kind of like just serendipity. It was through a series of just events that kind of led to me being in this situation. So, COVID happened while I was in the midst of my graduate program, and so that's why I actually didn't continue with the PhD program. Was I was floating in limbo. I was in a lab where I couldn't get any of my research done. I'd already gotten past my thesis, or presenting my general exam, which is presenting my thesis kind of stuff, and that would make it so I got my master's. But I was supposed to finish the doctoral part of it. That didn't happen because COVID-19. And so I basically said, I asked one of my professors, I said, how much longer will you think it's going to take me to graduate given the circumstances of having to restart my research and doing all that stuff? And they're like, oh, probably 10 years. So I would probably still be in that program right now for like another 2 or 3 years before I would have even gotten close to graduation. And then turns out my professor actually he was Chinese, and apparently turns out was stealing information from the government, and like funneling it. Like, he's actually a great scientist, but he also apparently was doing some sus stuff that I wasn't aware of. I was the only white guy in the lab, and it was a bunch of Chinese people, so they probably talked about a lot of stuff that I didn't know that was going on. But apparently, during COVID, the FBI like raided our lab, and then he fled to China, and so I actually got out probably 6 months before that, and just left the program and decided to move to Dallas and get a full time job and stuff like that. When I decided to go pro was probably after I'd done jujitsu for about 2.5 years, and I found I wasn't good at sales. I wasn't that good at doing the industry, the normal working. Well, I guess it's a 9 to 5 job, but I feel like every job that I got always wanted me to work like 70 hours a week. And all I did was find myself wanting to just do jujitsu all the time. I started doing privates on the side, and then I started realizing like, oh, I could just make money doing privates instead. And so after I moved to Austin, I remember I ended up getting fired from my previous job because I couldn't keep up with the sales that they were having. So I guess that you could say I failed upward is kind of how it goes. Like you could see the firing as like a failing, and maybe in some ways it was because I committed to something I couldn't keep up with. But ultimately, I kind of turned was it was it lemons in the lemonade. I made it so that like the bad situation actually just kind of revealed that I was more passionate about jujitsu, and because of that passion, I actually used my sales skills I learned at my previous job to actually start hustling with jujitsu and learn how to make reels and do all this other stuff and repurpose a lot of skills I didn't know I could do into jujitsu.
That this is a, by default, but at the same point, it's very, very natural. Like you do seem like the type of person who should be creating content, who has
Mhm.
competitive success. You want to do this, you want to continue doing it. You're with one of the premier, if not the premier teams. So,
Yeah.
like, you're in the right spot to be in a position where you can do incredible things. And the more and more you work with that team and have competitive success, you will likely have people wanting to get privates and do seminars and all that sort of
Mhm.
stuff in a way that you probably couldn't have ever imagined if you hadn't been pushed in that way.
Yeah, definitely. It's just one of those things. I guess it's kind of like I guess it's like it's not wrong to be addicted to things. It's just wrong to be addicted to the wrong things.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes people get addicted to drugs or all kinds of stuff or bad relationships or things like that. I guess what I tried to do is I never tried to stop that part of my brain or my psychology. I just had to find things that I could be addicted to but want to do all the time. And jujitsu tends to be a pretty healthy habit to have for the most part. I think some people can go pretty far, but you got to have like enough passions in your life to kind of, all right, let's say enough hobbies to fulfill your passion. So I like dancing, I like learning, I like doing a lot of things. Jiu-jitsu kind of facilitates that. And I don't know, it's kind of interesting because I would compare like the program that I have with John and stuff like at New Wave. It's very much like a PhD program. John's like the head professor, and then there are like teaching assistants or postdoctoral students, which are like Gordon and Gary and stuff like that. We can ask them questions as well. And then I'm just basically a PhD student again, trying to get my PhD in jujitsu.
Well, I'm sure we can figure out some sort of cap and robe sort of thing that we can get for
Yeah,
you at
something.
some point. Although, the weird part is their version is giving out the knives and whatnot. So, you know, arguably cooler. Who knows? I don't know.
No,
I just
it'd be
know.
pretty cool to get a knife from John. Like, no joke. I would be like, I'd hang that thing on my wall. It'd be
Yeah,
pretty
I was
cool.
about to say, I was like, I, as a not knife person, I'm always looking at that and I go, you know what? I know this means a lot, but I like to think that I'm also the person that if somebody gives it to me and it has meaning toward it, I'd be like, well, I guess I'm a knife person now. Okay. Thanks, John.
Well, it's not even. I feel like it's not even that it's a knife. It's the symbolism of it. It's like if you get a knife from John Danaher, there's only so many people that get something like that. And John puts. It's not like John just gets like a Swiss Army knife from the gas station and gives it to you. It's like he literally orders these things. He loves his knife, and so it's kind of like one of these gifts he gives to you that you can tell he put a lot of thought into it. A lot of the knives I've seen him give people, he gives them based off of like their personality. He's
Mm.
like, this knife is like very clean and technical, and this is what I imagine this person to be and how I characterize it. This one is more of like a real cutting knife, but it uses a lot of brute force, but it's still very like durable, and you can use it to take down certain, like you can see that he kind of almost like gives you your astrology symbol but through a knife almost. It's an interesting way that he sort of channels expression into the knives from what I've noticed. Like he doesn't give them very thoughtlessly or like, oh, I had this lying around, here you go.
No, I have picked that up. I have definitely picked that up. I just always thought, like, whenever somebody gives you a gift, I think some of us have very expressive faces. So I'm always
Mhm.
like, I want to make sure that I match the moment because I know my face can be very no sell, where I go, oh,
Mhm.
thanks.
Oh,
And they might be like, oh, you didn't
yeah.
like that? And I go, no, I do. It's just
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do with this? And then they say something
No, I'd
nice,
have
and you
a
go,
yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah, I
So
totally
I
agree.
just
I'd have a
always like to
retard
think of
time.
it in my perspective of don't be an asshole. Don't be an asshole.
Oh, yeah.
They're
I don't know,
being,
but
especially if John is being so nice about it, I'd be like, you have to be nice
mhm.
back.
No, if John's looking at me and he's just like, "Abraham," and then he, like, pulls out a knife, I would have the stupidest retard grin on my face. I'd be like, even if I'm not getting promoted or anything, I got a fucking thing. It's just a huge honor. It's a
Yeah.
big acknowledgement. You know what it means if you've
Yeah.
been on the team long enough. Like, you've seen a few people get things like that, and you're like, "Oh, okay." It's not casual that he does this sort of thing.
Yeah. I just, it's been a few years since I've seen Danaher in some time, but he was
Mhm.
one thing I like to observe is how people do humor. So when we would do interviews, he had a certain dryness that kind of played well with what I did. And
Mm.
but I like to watch how people do humor off camera because
Mhm.
they don't always match. Sometimes, people might have a persona that they put on camera and then they might be a different person
Mhm.
off camera. And John had a very, like, an even drier version of the one that we were doing together. And I go, no, it's
Mm.
pretty much the same. All right. That's very cool to
They
see.
probably It probably also just depends on, like, how you like, everybody's personality brings a different part of their personality out, like, because people wanna communicate and they wanna be proper and stuff, like, if you were a girl, I would talk to you differently, if you're a guy, I'm gonna talk to you differently, but it's because I wanna get along with y'all, you know
Mm.
what I mean? So I would kinda like, if you had a different background, you came from a different place, I would try to pull from what we have together, like, right now, we're communicating because the grappling background, but if you were like a scientist or if you were like Latino or something like that or whatever we're going over, I would try to like lean into whatever that is to try to find some sort of camaraderie with you.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think it's a natural thing to
Mhm.
try to find the similarities that kind of make
Mhm.
people have greater conversations or they build upon a language that they have together. I just
Yep.
always found it very interesting where the first time I'm doing an interview with John and he starts kind of doing jokes and humor, and I was like, what is this?
No, yeah, he's
Is he
pretty
gonna
funny
play with
actually.
me? Oh my god,
Yeah.
he's gonna do really dumb humor with me. All right, well, we're gonna do this. This is your fault, John. So
Mhm.
it also doesn't hurt that every interview I do with Gary is just literally me and him shitting on each other. So I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure that that sets the tone pretty nicely. So
No, Gary's a cool guy. I like Gary a lot.
yeah, Gary's essentially like a little brother I never wanted and tried to abort, but it's all right.
Mm.
I would tell you though, it has been great getting to know you a little bit better, sir. And part of the reason I brought you on is because you've been having some great competitive success. But full disclosure, I know the Abe Lock brought attention to what you're doing, but the continuation of how you've been able to hit it on so many people to the point where people in my gyms or who I train with will talk about that move is like, well, I want to
Mhm.
talk with the source material. So I definitely
Sure.
appreciate you giving the time, talking about that, your background, and much, much more. So we'll put a bookend on this conversation for today, but I'm sure in the future, when you win another thing, we'll bring you on to talk about that. But I'd love to right now put the camera on you and let you shout out anybody you want to, do all the plugs you want to, tell people where they can find you, et cetera, sir.
Sure.
Camera's on you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, just thank you guys for having me, or thank you for having me here. Sorry, Raf.
You're
So,
good, bud.
but yeah, if anybody ever wants to learn anything about my pages or anything, or learn more about me, Instagram is a great place to learn about me. I'm pretty active on there. I'd say I post something most every other day. I particularly say I'm oriented or helpful towards those that want to learn more about jujitsu, or I think I have a pretty interesting take on things a lot of the time that people seem to like. So you can sometimes see a lot of my personality and stuff like that. I post some decent memes sometimes when I think something's funny or interesting. If you want to learn from me, I have a subscription on my Instagram. It's a new function I've seen that Instagram offers. It's literally just $10 a month, and I think it's stupid, stupid cheap for the amount of effort that I go in there. We have a discussion group where you can literally ask me questions, and I will respond to it usually within like 24 to 48 hours. And there's also a lot of other people who also love jujitsu, and they talk and they like to give their thoughts and stuff. And we have an open discussion, as well as I post 3 reels a week regarding technique or strategy or whatever things that people are usually asking in the discussion group anyway, to help give the visual representation of how I answer the questions as well. And so, what I found is a lot of people are very, very happy with the service, and they'll come in, they'll be like, I don't know what it is at first, but then they stay and they really like it. A lot of people really like it because I have unique takes on reverse close guard and the A blocks, which I'm very much known for. So they come for the reverse close guard, they come for the A blocks, but then they stay because they realize I actually know what I'm talking about with jujitsu.
that's That's a very good plug. I like the idea that they're like, they come for this. You know, in time, you'll probably say something to the effect of, they come for the jiu-jitsu, but they stay for the dancing.
Yeah, that's really what
You
it
know what I
is.
mean? Like, people
Well,
are going to be
it's
along
funny.
there.
Well, a lot of the people I think who wanna come learn from me, they come because 'cause they're like, "Oh, Abe's gonna tell us to play nothing but guard and play reverse close guard and Abe locks," and I say, "Hey, all that's really great, and I do think it's important to have that part of your game, but lately, if you met any of the people, they would know all I do is I tell them, 'You should learn top. Learn top, learn how to pass, learn how to wrestle,'" and they're like, "But you're telling us the exact opposite." It's like, imagine going to, like, I'm talking about doing Hindula teens or 10th Planet subs and stuff, but then they come in there, and then I just start using Japanese terms for, like, Ashigarami and stuff. They're just like, "Wait." Yeah.
I mean, listen, dude, sometimes you got to give them the greatest hits, and then sometimes you got to play stuff from the new album. That's really what it comes
100
down to, dude.
100%, 100%.
That's why sometimes when people come to my class, I'm like, "Hey guys, this one's from my new album." They're like, "Ah," and I go, "Hey, no,
Uh,
no, shut up.
yeah,
You got to get good at something else sometimes, guys."
mhm.
So
Yep,
I do my best to do
makes
that.
sense.
Abe, I appreciate your time. You're good people. It is great to get to know you. I'm going to close this off and then I'll say bye to you off air. But my thanks to you. Continued success on both the competitive fronts and with your videos. You have done an excellent job, and I hope to see even more of those, especially when you get your laptop back, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, you guys, that's going to do it for us here at the Grappling Hour. A few quick reminders. First and foremost, like, comment, and subscribe. Now, I told you, if there was something that you wanted to comment on, I will give you a prompt in the discussion section below. You can put in the comment section, what's a song that makes you want to dance? That's a very easy one. Now, I know some of you guys don't want to admit that stuff, but I mean, like, legitimately, be humans. Do something fun outside of jiu-jitsu every once in a while. It's very good. I'll tell you one. Yesterday, listened to some Prince. Went out, did karaoke, crushed it. Got free drinks. Dancing gets you stuff. So just saying. There is that. Additionally, if you guys like our stuff, go to our patreon.com/grappling hour, $5 a month. See our interviews 30 days before anybody else. And for a few extra dollars, see technique breakdowns, tape studies, and more content not available anywhere else. You can also check out our podcast on Patreon, of course, but you can go to Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. It is on there for the audio versions. And if you want to continue the conversations that we have here on the show, head on over to our Discord page at Grappling Hour as well. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us here at the Grappling Hour. It has been a great day for grappling. We'll see you back on the mats.